Hi, welcome to the Great Wine Guide. My name is John Dawson. Today we're going to be talking about the 5 S's of a proper wine tasting. Before we can actually begin the process of tasting the wine, we first have to open the bottle. So while standing, you're going to take your wine key. Now I prefer a double-hinged wine key because it makes the opening or the removal of the cork much easier, and I'll explain that here in just a second. But first you're going to take your knife and you're going to remove just the top part of the capsule. Just cut through it on both sides, and then you just remove it like that and just peel it off the rest of the way. Okay? Next it comes time to insert the corkscrew. So you're going to place the tip of the corkscrew right in the center of the cork, and it's easiest if you do this with a wine key or corkscrew laying at a slight angle. Then stand it upright. And then just turn the wine key. Don't turn the bottle, and drive it all the way down. Now here's where having a double-hinged wine key comes in handy. You take the first level of the double-hinged wine key, put it there. Now you raise it up again, second time, and there we go. So now that we have the bottle opened and we've been presented with the cork, or you present the cork to your guest, I've seen people do all kinds of things with the cork. But what should we do with it? Now, the first S that we're going to be talking about is sight. It's the visual inspection not only of the wine, but of the bottle and also of the cork. So, as we visually inspect the wine, there's several things that we're going to be looking for. One, you want to make sure that the end of the cork is actually still moist. That means that the bottle was stored properly, which was on its side, because if the cork dries out, it's going to allow, or possibly allow, air to get into the wine. So if the end of the cork is dry, then that can allow air to possibly come into contact with the wine, causing the wine to actually spoil. Never a good thing. Also, you're wanting to make sure if you're drinking a red wine that the end of the cork is red. And if that red staining comes up the side of the cork, especially if it comes all the way up to the top of the cork, if you see any staining on top, that's going to indicate that wine is actually overheated and most likely has escaped the bottle, therefore allowing air into the bottle. Again, a sign that the wine has gone bad. Next thing you want to do is just press the cork. You want to make sure it doesn't fall apart, disintegrate in your hand, that the cork's not dry rotted. Because if a cork is dry rotted, then it's not going to do a very good job of actually securing or preventing the wine from being spoiled. So that's all you need to do with a cork. The first part about sight, or the visual inspection of the wine itself. Now I know we already talked about the cork and the bottle, but when it comes to visually inspecting the wine, you want to check for the color and the clarity. If you know that you're drinking a Pinot Noir from, let's say, Napa or the Russian River Valley or the Willamette Valley in Oregon, or even a New Zealand Pinot Noir, you want to make sure that the color of that particular wine is going to be consistent with the region from which it comes. So we know that a Pinot Noir is going to be much lighter in color. So if you pour it out and it's that really dark brick red, it tells you immediately that just on the visual inspection of the wine that something is perhaps a little off. All right? Also, you want to look at the clarity of the wine. Now, some wines are oaked and others are not, but oak, especially if it's new French oak, will add a little bit of richness or color to the wine, especially if you're talking about a white wine, namely a Chardonnay. But in a Pinot Noir, this one has seen 39 months in oak. It didn't affect the color that much because, again, we're dealing with a red wine here. So right out here, we also can talk briefly about the rim variation. Now, the rim variation is how quickly the wine changes in color from being this really translucent or almost clear out here where the wine hits the glass, and it gets gradually darker as the wine comes back down. Now, the more quickly that variation is going to take place, it's going to tell you that that wine is going to be a lot richer and a lot more full-bodied, perhaps like a Cab or a Malbec or a Syrah. In this case, it's a very slow graduation. It tells me that this wine, without even tasting it, is going to be a very light-styled Pinot Noir. After you check out the rim variation and the color and the clarity, and you make sure that it's all in line with the wine that you either ordered or bought, you now want to go to the next step, which is called the swirl of the wine. A lot of people are always asking me, do you swirl white wine like you swirl red? The answer that I like to tell people is, well, it's up to you. Me personally, I swirl my coffee in the morning. I swirl my iced tea. I swirl literally everything. But the reason that you swirl wine is so that it will release the natural ethers, esters, and aldehydes, or open up the nose or the bouquet of the wine. So you can either do it one of two ways, either with a glass setting down on a table, which makes it quite a bit easier to maintain it and make sure that the wine doesn't go everywhere. Or if you've been drinking wine for a while, you can also just do it like that. Now, a Pinot Noir has a much lighter nose than a Cabernet would. That's why if you're drinking a Pinot Noir, ideally you would want to serve it in a Pinot Noir glass. That will simply, they're the glasses by the way, the ones that are wider at the bottom and more narrow at the top. So it will kind of concentrate that nose or the smell of the wine into the top of the glass, so that when you take the next step, which is the smell of the wine, that it will concentrate that aroma. But for the purpose of demonstration, we're just going to go through the swirl. Now, after you swirled it, immediately you'll notice that legs begin to run down the side of the glass. Now, the legs are going to tell you quite a bit about a wine. Besides the fact that they look really cool, besides that, it can also let you know what the residual sugar is, or the alcohol content, the glycerin content of a wine. It's also going to tell you how long the finish of that particular wine is. The longer it takes the legs to run down the side of the glass, which is non-porous, then you know it's going to cling to your palate that much longer as well. And if it clings to your palate, you're able to taste it a lot longer. Therefore, it means it has a longer finish. All right? So I would say that the legs on this one for a Pinot Noir actually run fairly slowly. Well, I'd say moderate to slow. So we're now going to move on to the next step among the 5 S's of a proper wine tasting. We've gone through sight, swirl. The next one is smell. So after you complete the swirl of the wine, the next thing you want to do is smell it. I always recommend that you smell a wine at least 3 times. The first time you smell the wine, it kind of clears out any other scents or aromas, especially if you're at an Italian restaurant, let's say, or if you're at home cooking dinner or barbecuing. Kind of gets those smells out of your nose. And then the next smell, you can start thinking about varietal characteristics. What do I get in this? Do I get red fruit? Is it dark fruit? Do I smell oak, toast, smoke, mushrooms? What is it that I get? Earth, dust? There's a lot of different things that you can smell for depending on what it is, what type of wine that it is that you're actually drinking. So the third smell, start thinking about what would this wine pair really well with. And some wines may be just perfect on their own. So immediately when I smell this wine, the first thing that popped into my head as far as what it would pair well with was a really nice Italian sausage stuffed mushroom, one that's mild, with a nice wild rice, a little bit of Parmesan cheese, maybe a little bacon crumbles. It would be something spectacular. Stuffed mushrooms would pair really, really nicely with this wine. As a matter of fact, I'm going to put the recipe for stuffed mushrooms on my website as well, so y'all look there for that. So now that we've smelled the wine 3 times, everybody's favorite step we're going to move into now, and that's called the sip of the wine. So we've done sight, swirl, smell. Now we're going to go through the sip. Just like on the smell stage, we want to sip the wine 3 different times. First time, wine is already going to be acidic, we know that, so it's going to be a shock to your system, so don't even judge a wine based upon the first taste. So, all right, that's the first sip. Now on the next sip, again, start thinking about what varietal characteristics you're picking up. In this particular wine, I get a lot of the big red fruit. There's a little bit of plum, a little bit of strawberry actually going on as well. But it has almost a pepperiness to it. It's absolutely delicious, fantastic Pinot Noir. Joe Shirley, the winemaker on this wine, did a great job. So the third taste, Think about, again, what would it pair well with? The reason that you want to taste a wine 3 times is to confirm what your nose smelled. The importance of that lies in this important truth. There are only 4 different tastes. Those are sweet, sour, salty, and bitter. There are over 4,000 different scents that we can smell. 4,000. So the most important step during a wine tasting process is actually the smell, not the sip. So now if you go ahead and smell the wine again and think back to when you tasted it, does the taste match what you smelled? Are you getting an aroma of red fruit? Are you getting an aroma, a little bit of earth, as you would find in most Pinot Noirs? And then does it taste like that as well? So the taste aspect is confirmation of what the nose knows, basically. So after we've tasted the wine 3 times, now for the all-important finish or savor of the wine. How long you're able to taste the wine after you swallow it. Now, if we think back a few steps to when I was talking about the swirl of the wine and talking about the legs specifically, I said the slower the legs run typically, not always, but typically the longer the finish. Now, what's really interesting about that is if you taste this wine, and then after you swallow it, how long are you able to taste that wine? What I consider to be a short finish is 15 seconds or less. Now, a short to medium length finish is going to be between that 15 to 30 second period, and a medium to long finish is going to be that 30 to 45 second finish. A long finish is anything from 45 seconds to about a minute. And then what I consider to be, or what I call a forever finish, is longer than a minute. And you're going to find those on a lot of your really big, especially the Italian varietals, a Sangiovese, a Nebbiolo, like a Barbaresco or a Barolo. You're going to find finish like that in those style wines, or an unfined, unfiltered Napa Valley Cab as well. So today we've talked about the 5 S's of a proper wine tasting. Now, just to recap, those are sight, swirl, smell, sip, and of course savor or finish of a wine. Speaking of wine tasting, I'm going to go ahead and pour myself another glass. I'm John Dawson, and this is The Great Wine Guide. Salute.